Hi students, how do you do? Welcome to EduStar video session. This is class 11 chemistry and you are with me in the part 1 of the second chapter, structure of atom. In the previous unit we have discussed about the Dalton's atomic theory. The Dalton atomic theory was a baby theory. It was not able to say about the stability of the atom. Moreover, it was not able to obey the law of definite proportion, law of conservation of mass and law of multiple proportion. Here you are seeing a thing which remains our childhood event. When we rub a comb vigorously in the oily hair and bringing the same to the pieces of paper, it will get attracted because of the static electricity. On those days, Dalton was not able to explain even this concept because those days he was not aware of the subatomic particles present in the atom. Now, before going into the unit, let me want to say the thing which is very familiar to you. Like charges repel and opposite charges get attract to each other. Today I am not going to teach any chemistry, but I am going to say some wonderful stories. Those stories are the inventions of the subatomic particles. For curiosity, I am not going to reveal the name of the subatomic particle, but I will narrate the story now. See, Faraday was a scientist who invented the concept electrolysis. What is electrolysis? He takes two metallic electrolytes, say anode and cathode, and get connected to electricity. After a certain time, he was not able to see something is deposited at the cathode and something get depleted from the anode. This concept is electrolysis. On the basis of this electrolysis, he formulated certain laws, and those laws will be learned by you in class 12. He do the same experiment in a partially evacuated cathode ray tube. What does mean by partially evacuation? That is, it is made as vacuum. That is called as the partially evacuated. He taken a partially evacuated glass tube, and also he have taken a cathode and anode in it, and he connected those two electrodes to a power supply. He was able to absorb a certain rays travel from the cathode to the anode, right? So a ray travel from cathode to anode, he was able to absorb it. This ray was not visible to our eyes, but he proved the existence of this rays just by keeping a phosphorus or fluorescence coated screen in front of it, as you seeing in the diagram. So a cathode ray is just traveling from the cathode to anode, and those rays travel in a straight line and just hitting a phosphorus or fluorescence coated screen. After this striking up of the rays by the screen in the screen, a scintillation is produced. So this is the proof how he confirmed his observation. This concept was later used in the televisions. In the older televisions, you can see a bulgy tube-like structure behind the TV display. That was the cathode ray tube, and those cathode ray tube was struck into the display of our old televisions. This was actually called as the picture tube. Now I am asking you a question. At this moment, have you guessed the name of the subatomic particle he have discovered? It is electron. See, cathode is a negative electron and anode is a positive electron. Whenever a thing move towards an anode, that is a positive electron. What is the positive electron? That is the anode. So it is moving towards a positive electron, right? So it must be a negative charged particle, right? What is a negative charged particle present inside the atom? That is an electron. So he have discovered electron in this manner. Now let me say something about the properties of these cathode rays. It travels in a straight line and it will create a scintillation when placed in a fluorescent or phosphorus coated screen. See the third point, in the absence of electric or magnetic field, these rays travel in a straight line. Okay, as in the curious thriller movies and in some horror movies, those will be taken in some parts, right? Similarly, this story is also continued in some parts. So part 1 is over. I'm going to start the part 2. So the third point, from the lead of the third point, I'm moving into the next story. The same experiment, that is the same cathode ray tube, was taken by another scientist called J.J. Thomson. He taken a cathode ray tube setup along with the electric and magnetic field. What was confirmed by Faraday? He say cathode rays travel in a straight line from cathode to anode, but whenever it is kept inside a electric and magnetic field, it was not used to travel in a straight line. See, in the presence of the electric field, the cathode ray just get deflected and it reaches the point A, as you are seeing in the diagram. In the presence of magnetic field, the cathode ray get deflected and it reaches the point C. After a prolonged struggle, he somewhat balanced the electric and magnetic field and he made the cathode ray to be in a straight line. Okay. So this was the thing actually done by the J.J. Thomson. So what he have actually taken? He have taken the cathode ray tube and he see a deflection in the cathode rays because of the electric and magnetic field, right? This electric and magnetic field had a influence in the deflection of the cathode rays. How this deflection happens? When the charge of the particle is high. Whenever the charge of the cathode ray particle is high, then there will be a much interaction. Whenever there is a huge interaction, the deflection is also going to be certainly high. Okay, how I can relate this means when charge increases, the deflection is also going to be increases. That is, the charge of the cathode ray particle is always directly proportional to that of the deflection. This is one assumption. And another assumption is whenever the mass of the cathode ray particle is light, the deflection will be more. So a paper will fly fast and compared with that of a notebook, right? Similarly, a lightweight cathode ray particle is get deflected more. So whenever the mass is less, then the deflection will be more. So it is indirectly proportional. Whenever the mass is less, the deflection will be more. Okay. So on the basis of these two assumptions, he derived a thing like this: E by me. E stands for the charge of the particle, charge of the cathode ray particle. Me stands for the mass of the electron. So J.J. Thomson just discovered the charge to mass ratio of an electron, right? So he got a number 1.7588020 into 10 to the power of 11 coulomb per kg. So this was actually found out by J.J. Thomson. Later, Mulliken oil drop experiment. This experiment was conducted by Mulliken inside the experiment setup which you are seeing in the diagram. Here he found out the exact charge of the electron. So what he have actually find out, the exact charge of the electron is minus 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. Now the universally accepted charge of the electron is very closer to the thing which was predicted by Mulliken on those days. Minus 1.602176 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb is the agreed value nowadays. So he combined the results given by the J.J. Thomson and his result. So Mulliken combined the result of both his investigations and the J.J. Thomson, and he derived the mass of a single electron. So mass of the single electron is 9.1094 into 10 to the power of minus 31 kg. Imagine how a negligible quantity it is, right? Now we are going to see the discovery of proton and neutron. The proton was also discovered in the cathode ray tube, but this cathode ray tube was somewhat modified or upgraded version than the old cathode ray tube. There they was able to identify a ray travel from anode to cathode. Since it travels from anode to cathode, they call it as the canal rays. Now let us discuss the properties of the canal rays. Unlike the cathode rays, these positively charged particles. Why I am calling this as positively charged particles? Since it travels towards a negative electron, so the ray is a positively charged ray, that is our proton, right? These specifically depend on the nature of the gas present inside the cathode ray tube. they also, their charge to mass ratio also get influenced by the gas from which they originate. So this was the main difference between the cathode ray and the canal ray. Now let us see the discovery of the neutron. Chadwick, a scientist, by bombarding a thin sheet of beryllium by alpha particles, he was able to identify neutral particles was emitted from the beryllium sheets. He was also able to observe the mass of the particular particle is slightly greater than that of the neutron. So they are not void of any charges. That is, they are not of positive charge and they are not having negative charge. They also have a mass just a little bit greater than that of the protons. He called that neutral particles as neutrons. That was the discovery of the neutron. Now let us move on to the atomic models. The Dalton's atomic theory, he didn't say about any of the subatomic particles. In the next, Thomson, he identified the proton and neutron existence. So now we are going to see the Thomson atomic model. So how Thomson described his atomic model means, he said that the positive charged protons are equally distributed in the surface of the atom. He believed that positive charges doesn't concentrate in any of the area. He just believed the positive charged particles are distributed all along the surface of the atom. He also said that the negatively charged electrons are just embedded in the surface. So electrons are just embedded in the surface and the positive charges are found all along the surface. So that was the thing proposed by the Thomson model. So this Thomson model was also known as the watermelon model. See, as the seeds of the watermelon, black color seeds are found everywhere. As like this watermelon, the electrons are embedded in the surface of the atom. That was the thing proposed by the Thomson model. In the laddu also we can see there's some nuts embedded then and there. Yes. The next thing is Rutherford's nuclear model. Why does Rutherford nuclear model arises? Because the Thomson model was a failure one. He said only about the positive charges and negative charges. Rather, he didn't say about the stability of the atom. If a positive charge and negative charge is present nearby, surely we will think it will get attracted to each other. If he was not able to account for the stability, for this reason his theory will become failure, and now came to the Rutherford's nuclear model of atom. So Rutherford was the one who proposed the protons are found to be in the core of the atom. That is, he discovered or he proposed a thing, the existence of the nucleus. Inside the nucleus, what are the things present? Protons and neutrons are present. Here, Rutherford said protons are present inside the nucleus. Protons are present inside the nucleus, and the nucleus was having a radius much smaller than that of the overall radius of the atom. This was the thing proposed by the Rutherford. How he derived or concluded these things means by his experiment. So let us see his experiment now. So this was the setup actually made by the Rutherford. He have a alpha source particle as a source. So a alpha particle was made a source. He passed those alpha particles through a lead plate, and after crossing the lead plate, it was strike on a thin gold foil. So a thin gold foil was kept in another side. Those thin gold foil, the alpha ray particles. What is the charge of the alpha ray particle? It is a positive ray. So a positive ray was just sent to strike over the gold foil. Surprisingly, he was able to see few of the positive rays get deflected. Get deflected in the sense I am saying it is bounce back. Okay, as we hit a ball in a wall, it will came to our hand in the same velocity. Similarly, some of the alpha particles bounce back very speedily. Some of the alpha particles just pass through the gold foil. These two things are observed by the Rutherford's gold foil experiment. From this only, he came to the conclusion that the thing that is the alpha particles which get fastly bounced back, there he believed the existence of the nucleus, and those nucleus was a tiny area or having a tiny radius and found at the center of the atom. So this was the thing confirmed by Rutherford. So the bouncing back alpha particles is can be related with that of the positively charged nucleus inside the atom. The thing which pass through are the empty spaces. So are the empty spaces means there is no existence of positive charges rather than the small radius in the core of the atom. So these two things were said by the Rutherford's nuclear model. So after this also we will be able to see some other model, Bose model, which will be discussed in the next class. Now I'm going to say something about the atomic number. The atomic number is indicated by the letter Z. The number of electrons in an atom or the number of protons in an atom. So both will be same number for all the atoms. So the number of electrons or number of protons in a neutral atom is always same. Okay. The next thing is mass number. The total number of both protons and neutrons is equal to mass number. Coming to the indication of the formula, whenever we write an element, we always used to write the mass number in the top of the element and the atomic number in the subscript. Okay, remember as A to Z. A was in the top and Z was in the bottom. So A is in the superscript and Z is in the subscript. A to Z. Remember for your clarification. Just isotopes. What are isotopes? Isotopes are the elements which have same atomic number but different mass number. So the mass number get different. Where the mass number will be? It is in the top of the element, right? Here see the example, hydrogen 1, hydrogen 2, hydrogen 3. So these are the isotopes of hydrogen. The first one is called as hydrogen and the second one is called as deuterium and the third one is called as the tritium. You may study in the class 11 itself. In the future units you will be studying about these isotopes. Now this is the isobars. What are isobars? It is a controversial statement of the isotopes. See, in the isotopes the mass number is different, atomic number is same. But in isobars the mass number is same but the atomic number differs. For example, carbon 614. See, carbon 614 is just an isotope of carbon. Actually carbon 612 is the major isotope of carbon. The minimum isotope of the carbon is carbon 614. It is isobaric with the nitrogen element. Okay, so that's all of this unit. We will see the Schrodinger wave equation and the rest of the things in the future sessions. Thank you.